Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Prof Sales, a reseller's evolution, where we teach you to be a better reseller. Today's subject is one that is near and dear to my heart, and it is on spreadsheets. More specifically, the sourcing, listing, and selling matrix or metrics that I have on my spreadsheet. Hopefully, by explaining these topics in a little more detail, you'll be able to use these numbers to make better decisions in your business. So let's get right to it. Okay, here we see a section of my spreadsheet that I call sales, as you can see by the tab down here. And this is showing some results from July of 2015 all the way through January of 2016. Over here you see in this column a bunch of different labels for things that I like to track. This includes the number of items I sell per day, the number of items listed in a given time frame, the number of items sold, and the number of items sourced. So let's break those down. We can see that in January, so far I've sold 2.71 items per day, and that's defined with this formula up here, which divides the total number of items I've sold by 31 days in January. Now we're only 20 some days into January, so this number is not quite a true number yet, but it will be at the end of the month. Here we see that I have listed 70 items this month. This pulls from my inventory spreadsheet, which is down here. We'll go through in another video. Here we see I have sold 84 items, which is from further up in my sales sheet. And I have sourced 41 items, which is from this tab down here. Again, these are items that we will go through in a future video. So for the moment, just accept that those numbers are really what they are, and we'll talk about them at a later date. Down here, we see some numbers that are ratios. And let me explain what these are. The first one is a sold list ratio, which takes the number of items sold and divides it by the number of items listed. And you can see it's 1.2. The next one is sold sourced, which divides the number of items sold by the number of items sourced. And then finally, we see listed items divided by the number of items sourced. So 3 different metrics we have there, and let's talk about what those each mean. Let's start with sold list, which is right here, which I think is maybe the most important of the 3. What this means is if this number is above 1, you are depleting your listings. In other words, you are selling faster than you are listing items. So in essence, your number of listings will be going down. You can see for the month of January, I'm selling a little bit more than I am listing. The next number is sold sourced, which also has a similar meaning. In this case, I am selling quite a bit more than I am sourcing. So again, I eventually will run out of items if I continue with this type of metric. So that's what the sold source ratio tells you. And finally, listed source is the number of items listed divided by the number of items sourced. So this means, are you listing what you're sourcing? And it looks like I'm listing a decent amount more than I'm sourcing. So what do these 3 numbers mean in general for my business? These specific ratios, what do they mean for me? Well, it's pretty easy to see that you definitely want your sold listed ratio should be below 1, really. Because if you're not adding listings, or if you're selling quicker than your listing, you're hurting your profit potential. Imagine a retail store where they put out 100 items and they have another 100 in the back. And they sell 50 of them, but they only bring out another 20. Well, eventually at that rate, their store is going to look empty, and it's going to be empty if they don't catch back up to the number of items they need to bring out onto the floor versus what they're selling. And a customer walking into that store would see empty racks and empty fixtures and empty tables and think, man, this place is going out of business. Plus, you're also hurting your sales. You would never want to have empty racks for very long in a retail store because square footage is expensive. And if you're not using that square footage to sell things, you're losing potential revenue. Same here, if you have 100 listings available and you only have 80 of them filled, well, you're hurting your revenue. There's no doubt about it. You definitely want to stay ahead of what you're selling with what you're listing. So I definitely have an opportunity here in January to catch up some. For the year, you can see that I'm actually not doing too bad. I'm at 0.87, so I'm staying ahead of what I'm selling, for the year so far. But definitely an opportunity here in January, right here in the short term. So that is definitely a number I'm going to have to take into consideration and increase the amount of items that I'm listing. That would be the solution. Sold sourced. This number is really high, and this number should be below 1 as well. I am selling more than I'm sourcing, so even if I was staying ahead of my listings this month, it wouldn't matter. I would still be depleting my overall inventory. It looks like I need to source some more items, because what's going to happen here is, suppose for a moment I was completely listed out. I was at 100% of my capacity, which I'm not, by the way, but suppose that I was. What would happen here eventually is I would sell items, but I wouldn't have enough to replace what I had sold. So even though I could list everything that I had sourced, there just wouldn't be enough items sourced to catch up to how much I was selling. It's a good problem to have in some ways. It means you're selling through your items pretty quickly, but it also represents an opportunity to get out there and get more items so that I can get them listed and continue to increase my overall sales. So both of these numbers should really be below 1, the sold listed ratio, the sold source ratio. So here in January, I have definitely got some work to do. Finally, the listed sourced ratio is 1.71 for January. This number should probably be near 1. If you think about what this number means, say you're listing 10 items. Well, if you're buying 10 items, you're never really going to run out of items to list at that rate. But what's interesting here is, because I've sourced so few items in January, this 41 you see up here, my listed to source ratio has gone up pretty high. You really just want to keep this around 1, so that way you're staying on top of what you're listing versus what you're sourcing. For the year, I'm actually down below this number, so that's kind of interesting. But in this month, I definitely have an opportunity here to do a better job with my sourcing. This all comes back to sourcing and some listing. What you would take from these three numbers is, I need to source more because I got to prepare for the sales I'm having this month, because next month all of a sudden I won't have items to sell. And I also need to list a little bit more, as we see from this ratio right here. So again, to reiterate, sold to list ratio should be below 1, sold to source ratio should be below 1, and listed to source ratio should be somewhere near 1. So there is a good explanation, I think, of these three ratios and how you can use them to focus your efforts in a given day or week or month, or particularly even year. And as we can see over here for the year, I'm pretty close to sold list ratio. I'm okay with that. That's below 1. This one's probably a little too far below 1, indicating that I need to source a little bit more compared to what I've sold and so on. Or maybe you can even argue I need to just sell more compared to what I source. In any case, this is kind of a low number as well. We want it to be below 1, but maybe not that far below 1. So I need to look at ways maybe to improve my sales, I guess, not so much my sourcing, now that I think about it. And this number is also a bit low, this listed to source ratio. So again, for the year, I probably need to think about, let's get more items listed. That will turn more sales, and it will help me understand where I need to focus my efforts in the rest of January and February and going forward into the rest of this year. Okay, everyone, that's going to do it for this video on sourcing, listing, and selling. I hope it was informative. Please feel free to leave me comments and critiques and so on about what you think about this video. And make sure to hit the subscribe button down below And until next time, this is Prof Sales, and good sales to you.